Yes. So now we're gonna see how parallel the Islamic tradition of Ashura is parallel to the Jewish tradition. So Tishrei is the first month of the Jewish year. It's called the month of Tishrei. 10th of Tishrei is the day of fasting for the event of the repentance over the golden calf, and well, of course, for everything all throughout history and ourselves. But eventually, the event signifies the day when Moses came down with the second tablets, and it's on the 10th day of the first month of the Jewish year, which is Tishrei. Now, in the Muslim first month of the Muslim year is Muharram. As you can see, Muharram is the first month of the Islamic calendar. And I continue to say the 10th of Muharram, it means the 10th day of the first month of the Muslim year, is the day of Ashura. And for the Sunni, the day marks the parting of the Red Sea by Moses and the salvation of the Israelites. So we see parallel, and for Shia Muslim, it's also the death of Hussein ibn Ali. So we see parallels that somehow the Muslims knew about something about Moses, something about the first month of the year, something about the 10th day of the first month, and something about fasting, and they made this Muslim tradition that reflects this Jewish tradition of Yom Kippur, the Ashura fasting, which mirrors Yom Kippur. Do you understand?
So Yom Kippur occurs on the 10th day of the first month?
Of the first month in the Jewish calendar. And the Ashura fasting is also on the Muharram month, which is the first month, and the 10th day of the first month of the Muslim calendar. So it's basically
Right.
they like mirror the same event, but here it's for some reason it becomes like they fast because Moses split the sea and saved the Israelites. While in the Jewish tradition, because they don't have the second tablets, and in the Jewish tradition, it's the day we got the second tablets.
Right, and
is it a stretch or is this clear?
My microphone cut out there for a second. I apologize. And this is again back on the topic of redemption, because the whole point here, of course, is that when the first tablets were given, that should have been all that God really gave, right? Like he didn't have to give any more than that. Like the first tablet, you broke the tablets. Okay, sorry guys, you guys are on your own now. I'm not going to make no more, new tablets, right? But even so, even with the rebellion, even with the golden calf, because obviously the breaking of the tablets is linked with this idolatry, which that caused this event to happen. But despite all that, it's still this message of, I understand, right? There will be stumbling. There will be that, but you will be able to redeem yourselves. So the giving of the second tablets is also linked with that, which is of course why I can see how it's then in the Jewish tradition linked with Yom Kippur, as that then can be symbolizing the covenant of Yahweh with the children of Israel, in the sense that even when they break the first tablets, they will still be given a second set.
Yeah, they gave a second set and were sort of forgiven, and not totally, but yes. I mean, but anyway, it's in the. I think one of the principles of religion is not only to comfort the suffering, but it's also to discomfort the people who are satisfied and content, because sometimes people tend to be comfortable in going astray and doing corrupt things, and even they feel comfortable. They fall to this kind of comfort that everything will be okay, I'll do good. So the role of religion is actually not only to comfort those who suffer, but also to rebuke those who are satisfied. Be careful of what you do, or be mindful. Think about what you're doing all the time. Don't just be comfortable in your materialistic existence. Think beyond that. So this is the role of religions, and we see it in those examples how redemption, redemption and sin and redemption are are always are in the storyline of the Bible stories, because they go together. But that's a more philosophical question. But here we see actual almost mirrors of two events. One is the Jewish one and one is the Muslim one. And while the Ashura day is completely vague, and it's not exactly, people don't really fast in that day. Sunni Muslims don't actually, it's a voluntary fast, and the Shia only fast, they more regard as the day of Hussein bin Ali. So all the Ashura tradition, original Jewish tradition, is fading away as Islam builds up on top of this Jewish origin.
The details of the tradition are lost, but the people, the living memory, still knows that there was something about this day, right?
Something about the 10th day of the first month, yeah.
Right, exactly. There's something about it, but we don't know exactly what it is, so something else fills the void. Because if the 10th day is important for some reason, there has to be something that fills it. There has to be a reason. So that reason gets added in to satisfy that need for the day to matter, and then that takes the form of an entirely different tradition that gets mapped onto the tradition, the Ashura, the original tradition, which comes from the Hebrew sources here.
Hebrew sources, the 10th of Tishrei, which is a completely different day from the 10th of the Muharram, and a different event. It's not the parting of the sea. Why would you fast for parting of the sea? Actually, after the Israelites were saved, it was the famous chapter where Miriam, mother of Jesus, of course, from the Quran, she made this beautiful song for God. It was a big celebration, not fasting. But
yeah, well, I guess the Israelites were fasting a little bit, at least in the desert, for 40 years, right? So it's a little bit of fasting.
Actually, they had good. The man was pretty good.
Oh yeah, fair enough. You're right. I'll take it back.
Well, what I think is that yes, there is this memory of something of importance, but then everything gets rebranded over time with an Islamic spin. Yes, like in these stories, that they grab things to do with Sheba. We've seen today as well with Pharaoh. Basically, people who, there were those stories in there in the legends, but then they end up not only in the Quran, but they get this Islamic spin, and it's all about the spin. In terms of this particular fasting, I can't remember if it is this one, the one where it is in the hadiths that Muhammad goes, I think it is to Medina, and the Jews are fasting on a day, and he says, hey, why are you fasting? And he says, oh, because of Moses. And then he says, okay, so we have more right to Moses than you, so now we're gonna fast. And he's like, okay, maybe that is part of the memory of what happened, knowing that pretty much they copied so much from Christians, from Jews, from actual canonical stuff, and also from legends and apocryphal. They copied from everything, but they just give a spin, an Islamic spin to everything. And maybe that's how we end up with an actual hadith saying, yeah, he just copied that from them and asked no questions about it.
Well, yeah, they weren't fasting for Moses. They were the stories related to Moses bringing the second tablets, and they're fasting for the sins. But it's like, oh, something about Moses, just fast because we are better than thou.
Yeah, and
blah blah blah. Moses fast.
Yeah, and you see how all of the traditions then become pretty much really something about Islam, not traditions because of Abraham or Moses. They tilt to then move towards it's all about Muhammad said it, so we have to do it. But also, in terms of this thing about the 30 plus 10, I remember the first times that I actually read the Quran and I came across those verses. I never noticed the verse that you have shown on the screen today, that he picks up the tablets. I never noticed that. So when I saw the 30 plus 10, I thought there must be something of importance. Otherwise, the Quran would say we did these 40 days. So my assumption from when I read this the first times was that maybe they believed that the first tablets were given in the first 30 days, and then he breaks them, and then he writes the tablets on the next 10 days, and that's why they split. I never actually picked up on what you have shown, that no, they were not broken, because it's not actually explained in there. So I am very, very glad that finally you have
Well, is that
explained
necessarily the
reason.
case? Is that necessarily the case, though, to say that? Okay, because look, the text, because it's apocryphal, right? If just before it's saying something about how the 30 plus 10, that suggests that this text is familiar with the fact that there were two sets of tablets. And then later for the text, because I would put forward it's apocryphal and it's not being super detailed and everything, when it says that then he picks up the tablets, is it not then possible that that is just, very quickly fast forwarding to then when he picks up the second set of tablets? As in, I'm putting forward that it's not necessarily the case that the Quranic authors believed that the tablets, when they were thrown down by Moses, that they were like a Nokia brick, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily have to be the intent of the Quranic authors.
In the
Yeah,
canon,
yeah.
in Exodus, I don't think it doesn't say 30 plus 10. In Exodus, it just says 40 days. Both times, it says
Right.
both.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is
This-
the 30 plus 10 in the Quranic text is affirming this midrash tradition.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
They get
Yeah. So
information
therefore,
from that.
it's familiar with the two sets, right? That's my point. If it's quoting this midrash tradition, we shouldn't therefore assume then later when it talks in text about then he picked up the tablets and doesn't speak of a second set, that somehow the author didn't know there was a second set when he's quoting a midrash tradition that affirms two sets, right? So maybe there's
Yeah. I agree with you. I think because they have taken this 30 plus 10, that means that whoever actually wrote those verses, they were actually familiar with there were two sets. However, once they're actually putting the Quran together, maybe they drop some verses, something happens, and then the Quran it doesn't explain that there were two. So the original belief, it must have been that there were two sets, and that was actually a very well-known thing. It's not only in the Talmudic or in legends, like the Christians and the Jews, Orthodox, they would know all of that. So they start with the position of knowledge that they know there are two sets of tablets. By the time that we get the Quran that we now do, that is not specifically stated, and it looks like they only had one set. And actually, I don't know if in their traditions, if in their hadith, they write that there were two sets or one set. That's not something I have looked into. Shai, have you actually looked at the hadith and see what is the Islamic belief as to whether one set of
No, they don't. There is no two sets. He lifts them up.
Wow, we're a Nokia then after all, huh? Okay, so we know for sure that according to the sin, okay, no, not for sure, but going off that, therefore the sin affirms only an interpretation of one tablet, where presumably it's like a Nokia brick and doesn't break. So he picks it up. Wow, didn't break. I threw it on the ground to break it, but it didn't break. Hallelujah. Right?
It doesn't say the Ten Commandments. Why he doesn't bother to know the Ten Commandments? Why would he bother to know how many sets were there, or how many
it's a genre.
tablets were there?
Yeah, it's an apocryphal genre. They don't have to relist all of the Ten Commandments, because when you're reading an entertainment book, you don't want to go through the legalisms, right? So that's why they don't talk about the Ten Commandments, because it's not meant to be a replacement of the Torah. It's meant to be an apocryphal literature. So therefore, when you're reading it, you know the Ten Commandments. It doesn't have to tell you them. That's assumed knowledge. If you're coming into reading this text, you know the Ten Commandments. You know?
Yeah, it's funny that because the only place where God tells the Jews to keep the Sabbath is in the Ten Commandments. I mean, not only in the Ten Commandments, but it starts there. This is where it's written. The holiness of the keeping the Sabbath is in the Ten Commandments, and the Quran is obsessed about Jews breaking the Sabbath without even understanding where this law comes from, which is actually the Ten Commandments, which they have no idea what they are.